Massey's lectures. You've heard me talk about this before. This Gerald Massey's lectures he has 6 volumes. 6 volumes out. They cost like they're $50 each paperback and probably $90 hardback. But you can get all 6. You can get a synopsis of the 6 volumes in this one book, Gerald Massey's lectures. This is an excellent book. This is an excellent book. Massey is one of the greatest Egyptologists of all time that was shunned by his white counterparts because of the simple fact he told the truth.
Okay.
Because he told the truth. There's a chapter in this particular book called, the section is called The Devil of Darkness, The Evil in Light of Evolution, page 141, which is interesting because he's trying to give you a synopsis of what this whole devil thing is that people are scared of, and I've been talking about this for years. And to this day I say, well, I'm from the dark side, and people go, ooh, still scared of this thing. And most conscious people are still weary about, wow, man, I just don't know about all of that. But he also did a synopsis. There's a bigger one. He has one in this book where he showed the Egyptian aspect of the Christ, of Horus, and he shows the Jesus parallel. So it'll show you all of this stuff, and if you get the book of the day, his Light of the World, he shows that particular parallel. Literally hundreds of parallels of the thing between Jesus and Horus and Heru. Since then, there's a cassette that came out, and we pretty much have an access to just about all the conscious videos in the country. We have some access from different people. We got people in Atlanta, we got people in New York, and throughout the whole United States, we can pretty much put our hands on any kind of tape, which is good, because that's where it's supposed to come down to a network to free up the stuff from people hardening. There's a tape called The Naked Truth, and it deals with religion. And in that particular tape, The Naked Truth, dealing with some white boys that put this thing together in 1990, they said there's literally hundreds of parallels between Jesus and Horus, and literally hundreds of parallels between Jesus and Krishna. And these both entities predate the Jesus character 10,000 years with Horus and 5,000 years with Krishna. And then then you have the whole Shiva aspect in which Krishna came from. You see, Hercules is the form of that whole Jesus concept. The whole Jesus concept, and Disney put out Hercules a couple of years ago. All that's nothing but information coming from ancient Africa. I want to get out of that word Africa, because we're talking about now, we have to get into the concept of the whole globe being our home. They have a pyramid second to the Great Pyramid in Egypt, right in China. But they won't show it to people, and they got that area blocked off that the rest of the world can't see, because the Chinese have no record of building pyramids. So therefore, if there's the second biggest pyramid in the world, other than second to the Great Pyramid in Hemmitt, and they got it roped off, but they got it sectioned off, but you can't see and won't allow you to see, it's because it gives up the real origin of their civilization. Point blank. You see, point blank. They're talking about even things like 50 pyramids reported somewhere in Iraq. Some stuff underground. All types of stuff. So we talk about history that is being uncovered, but this thing here is vast, so vast until if we took the next 10 years, you come back 10 years later, the history of the earth will resemble something totally different than what we think now with all the knowledge we have. You see, all the knowledge we have. But in this particular book here, starting on page 141, there's a section in this particular book. I'm going to try to find this section. On page 144, where he quotes this. Let's see if I can find the right part. And he talks about the black man. And I talked about this before, but I want to get the right one. This is the only thing that I didn't read over today. I just knew it was in the book. I had the book for a couple of years and all, but let's see what page this thing is on. He talks about, in so many words, he's trying to allude to this fear that everybody has with the devil. Gerald Massey had figured it out. He had figured it out, and it goes on to say, well, I can paraphrase it, until I can actually find one. He says that the black man was Negroid. Here it is. The black man without was Negroid within. As the natural phenomenon was the original devil put out the light by swallowing it increasingly as a subtle enemy or obstructor. So in so many words, a doubler of general adversary of man. So let's read that again. The black man without, black on the outside, was Negroid within, as his reflection remains the mirror of mythology. The darkness then was the natural phenomenon, was the original devil that put out the light by swallowing it increasingly as a subtle enemy or obstructor or doubler and general adversary of man. So in so many words, what he's talking about here is he's talking about the first part of the sentence. He's talking about something being Negroid within as well as out. He's talking about melanin. Then he goes on to say, well, they're talking about something that is metaphysical, biological, chemical, or whatever, that later on is written in the mythology and then misunderstood as being something evil, as the adversary. So we're talking about, you have Christ, and then you have the shadow. Christ is shadow, and the shadow is always the Antichrist. So that these are concepts like the yin and the yang, the light and the dark. And these are concepts that later on the races come in that doesn't understand the general mythology of the general science and the mythology, and they mistake the stuff for evil. You get it? So here he's making he's referencing something that originally was taught that Negroid without and Negroid within. He's talking about melanin. As we go on, we'll go into more and more of this as we go on about just exactly what this is talking about. We're going to go deeper and deeper into this stuff and try to sift through this. So this is and basically now this stuff, it goes like this. If we can go backwards, we'll start with religion. That would be moralistic and all the stuff that you learn. Then you would go into mythology, which would be the origin of where these stories come from. And then behind the mythology, they'll start breaking these stories down into concepts of psychology, chemistry, astronomy, astrology, physiologically, and they'll break all that down. So if we go forward, you'll be astronomy, astrology, physiology, biology, chemistry, aspects of high levels of spirituality, and then mythology that will explain all that. It'll take all that advanced science and break it down into mythology to explain to the average person. And then later you would have religion, which would be based off of mythology, but become more political. Don't do this, don't do that, based on what person wants you to behave a certain way so he can benefit from the civilization. Either by benefiting from some political thing to rule over you or some type of pathology. They want to rule over a woman, so therefore she becomes the object of evil in every damn thing. You see what I'm saying? Or they want to rule over another race, then they become the object of evil. Or they want to rule over another competing spiritual system, so that other system becomes the object of evil. You see what I'm saying? So the Typhonians, which is the pre-dynastic Egyptians, they become the devil to the dynastic Egyptians. The Hebrews, which is a later form of Egyptian, the Egyptians become the devil to the Hebrews. The Christians, which is a later spin-off of a cult coming out of Hebrewism, the Hebrews become the devil to the doggone Christians. And then so on, the Christians become the devil to the Islam. And this thing goes on and on and on, and it gets out of hand, stuff like that. No. You see, and we're still talking about he is a family fight because we know that the architect of all of these things are still black. You know, architect of all of this is still black. You see what I'm saying? So, and the elements are in all of those particular things. So right now, before we go into that, can you give me a glass of water? Whatever. Anybody have any questions before we go into this thing of anything that's, you know, doesn't really matter. Any questions, period? Yeah.
Okay, one thing I know, you know, it's the business I'm in and it deals with melanin. And it's one thing I know, nobody want to talk about it. They want you to be quiet. They really don't want you to deal with it. And then you just know that there's something that we don't know.
It's what, melanin?
Yes. They really don't.
Yeah, well, it is interesting. It is interesting because it's, I even noticed even in the metaphysical thing, I went through almost, for the last 14 years, I went through just about every book in every metaphysical bookstore in the East Coast and half the West. And you rarely see the word melanin.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? You rarely see the word melanin. You know, so we do know that has that light cut off. That's cool. Okay, all right, I just wanted to know. Okay, cool. So we do know that that's always a mystery. And the reason why that is because most of the stuff is still have to be accommodated with white. And with white people, if you start getting into stuff as the melanin and different things like that, you know, then you have to address the fact. Whereas, and which I'm going to show in some of these books, where they actually say, the majority of them say that that their pineal glands and the pineal activity doesn't last past puberty. So when you start talking about pineal gland and melanin and stuff, you got to address the fact that why theirs doesn't work past puberty. And so therefore, they would rather delete this. And even one of the top scholars in the field, researchers, a guy by the name of Kenneth Grant out of England, and he even mentions that the pineal gland, when I find the actual piece, the pineal gland is dormant after puberty or dormant after childhood. So they would rather say it's dormant in everybody after childhood than to say it's dormant in them. And like me and Latifah was talking about, basically the reason why we got a lot of problems with a lot of things is as far as not getting to the truth. It comes back to the European has to put blockage, he has to put constrictions on everything when it comes to history because he's only a laid up part of it. So therefore the history can only be 6,000 years. You see what I'm saying? And therefore, and also too, they would rather think that different pockets of everything you have is developed out of different parts of the world. Other than we can find that majority of the stuff that we have called knowledge, they had it all in one main library in the Nile Valley. Like take for instance, my sister-in-law, I got a sister-in-law, I met her when she was in college in the early 90s. She later on married my brother, and she started, and she and another sister named Aviva did a goddess lecture down in Atlanta when she finally came out and started doing what she was doing. The other sister was trying to do the goddess lecture for about a year, so she teamed up with my sister-in-law and they did this goddess lecture. And to show you how things spiritual go, when she went and did the research, she introduced a whole nother research and had my mouth open, me and the sister named Kimberly, who was like one of the goddess experts that was at the conference, had my mouth open where she introduced a whole nother research or information coming out of Hemmitt off the temple walls on two Marys that predates the Christian Mary, and this mythology of a creation story, how the world was, the universe was created by two sisters that got in a war with each other. And one wanted to keep the creation in the hemisphere or in the stratosphere or in the great beyond within the context of the nothingness of the universe, and the other one wanted to expand the creation. And apparently the one who wanted to expand the creation won out. And there was two sisters called M-E-R-I. You see? And she found this in Budge's hieroglyphic dictionaries. So, looking and saying that there's nothing that didn't come up out of Africa, didn't come out of the Nile Valley, didn't come out of black people. You see what I'm saying? Where we got that? Mary. You see, the same mother of Jesus. Two Marys that was in one of the creation stories. You see, that was in one of the creation stories. You know, we know there's several creation stories, which is here's another one to add, which there's a book, Marie-Louise von Franc's book, Creation Myths. So there's another creation story that we have to they have to add. But this is very pertinent information. So it's just ongoing when it comes to doing the research on this stuff. Any more questions? Any more? Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Right now I'm reading the Stargate Conspiracy.
Yeah, good book.
And they're talking about the Hall of Records or the Pyramid of Records that they may be looking for underneath the Sphinx.
Yeah.
And what's your...
well, my take on it is
that is something very important if it's to be found.
Well, my point is that this thing first showed up with Ed Casey. Edgar Casey, you know, the great psychic, was the first person to mention this stuff about a great hall of records that was under the Sphinx. And it would be opened up. And he was looking at it, but I don't think that he could understand what it was literally. Just like he said that in the last days there will be an avatar that will come called John Pineal. And John Pineal would bring the world to a new level of consciousness. So he's reading stuff, but he's not trained in the occult to understand that John, which is the Christian Elijah, and the Hebrew Elijah is the Egyptian Tahuti. You see what I'm saying? So John Pineal, the wisdom of Tahuti is the wisdom of alchemy. And so John Pineal means alchemical pineal or melanin pineal, because alchemy is the study of melanin. So he said pineal, John Pineal will come, and John Pineal is one who comes before Christ. But he said John, which is John who comes before Christ. Pineal is the Christ. John, Tahuti, or Anubis, Horus. Horus is called the Great Face, which is the pineal gland. So this was Chromium, I say Magnetar, I say Jupiter, I say Mars, I say Helios, I say Venus, I say Mercury, I say Diana, I say Ceres, I say Aether, I say Uranus, I say Rhea, I say Zeus, Apollo. Y'all know how I say, get it a little louder than that. Ready? Zeus, Apollo, I say Aphrodite, Hermes, Artemis, Demeter, Osea, Tahuti, Maya, Ptah, Sut, I say Ra, Heberu, I say Anpu, I say Aset, I say Neptune, I say, let's get a few more of that, Abraxas, I say Mithra, I say Asra, I say Raheru, I say Upwaret, I say Anut, I say Tatanen, I say Sekmet, I say Sachet, I say Sayas, I say Seket, I say Heket, I say Teket, I say Reket, I say Siva, I say Shiva, I say Shakti, I say Yemai, I say Odin, I say Frigga, I say Balda, I say Loki, I say Thor, I say Freya, I say Freya, I say Sip, I say Jeffress, I say Newt, I say Apit, I say Tyre, I say Dagon, I say Dogon, I say Cthulhu, I say Nirahotep, I say Shubnigarov, I say Abathos, I say Brahman, I say Brahmini, I say Vishnu, I say Ramachandra, I say Shiva, I say Indrasuta, I say Sita, I say Hanuman, I say Lakshmi, I say Jinsiya, I say Dhammawato, I say Marasha, I say Bridget, I say Adamwerdi, I say Ohu Pirelli, I say Ohu Shango, I say Ozuni, I say Edoedo, I say Alaka, I say Alafi, I say Obatala, I say Oduduwa, I say Orunla, I say Ogun, I say Shango, I say Oshun, I say Elegba, I say Ishu, I say Yiminya, I say Rishi Oku, I say Nakuka, I say Ombelenga, I say Oshosi, I say Olakun, I say Omitutu, I say Anitutu, I say Ilitutu, I say Tutu Elegba, I say Kosi Ka, I say Kosi Arun, I say Kosi Ido, I say Kosi Oku, I say Kosi Intana, I say Kosi Patabala, I say Akababa Maya, I say Mojo Ogo Alafi, I say Mojo Ogo Ogo Orisha, I say Mojo Ogo Idutun, I say Mojo Ogo Iku, I say Nilabara Nibali, Olodamare, Ibadi, Olorun, I say Nikamasi Ogogo, I say Babalasa, Yilasa, I say Nikamasi, I say I say Ra, I say Ka, I say Ba, I say Ab, I say Ku, I say Sahu, I say Captain, I say Cat, I say Tekim, I say Osel, I say Sut, I say Ama, I say Nyama, I say Bar, I say Na, I say Nomo, I say Ama, I say Yuguru, I say Yuguru, I say Kuntu, I say Digitarian stages, I say Sunensi, I say Sunubit, I say Atan, I say Medra Atan, I say Metatron, I say Melchizedek, I say Sutek, I say Raziel, I say Kaziel, I say Bubiel, I say Lakiel, I say Heniel, I say Michael, I say Iniel, I say Allah, I say Allah, I say Layla, I say Imama, I say Buzima, I say Muzimu, I say Camera, I say Shingu, I say Camera, I say Mambu, I say Marambu, I say Rarimki, I say Muzimu, I say Bodo, I say Da, I say Seldo, I say Fa, I say Yi, I say Maralisa, I say Si, I say Mawa, I say Leka, I say Kanapan, I say Makra, I say Maya, I say Santaman, I say Marampo, I say Santaman, I say Kanapan, I say Sasabam, I say Mikiel, I say Nikiel, I say Yeshua, I say Ishu, I say Bridget, I say Marduk, I say Tayamat, I say Maya, I say Mut, I say Mephinet, I say Nanu, I say Elijah, I say Tahuti, I say Anpu, I say Mim, I say Patah, I say Amin-Ra, I say Ra, I say Abra, I say Abrahadabra, I say to all ancestors, to all gods known and unknown, I say. So the Hemmitt family, the Shaw family, the Davis family, all my family members, count to 3, 1, 2, 3, start calling out your family members as passed on. 1, 2, 3. I say, 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 I say. To all gods known and unknown, I say. To all ancestors known and unknown, I say. Okay, we got the Ashe right here for that. You see what I'm saying? I had some shit. I should have brought some of that. Straight up. And all that. It's interesting because we went on the Indian reservation and the spirit came and said that his